Jumaniyazova, great, who is the director of Kazakhstan International Festival of New Music. She is also the creator of the first classical music radio station in her country. She's an entrepreneur and a fighter for classical music in her country. We have also Anna Berit Christensen, who is the director of the SPOR Festival for Contemporary Music and Sound Art in Aarhus, Denmark. She's a woman with a background both in contemporary and classical music, and she will tell us about the position of the woman probably in Europe, in her country, and according with her experience. So we have two very different countries, two different women from different countries to discuss about it, and also people from here, from Catalonia. First of all, Mercedes Conde, who is the artistic director of the Palau de la Música Catalana, and she's still the director of the Revista Musical Catalana. You're still my boss for some days at least. Okay. And Robert Brufau, who is the general director of the Auditori de Barcelona. He has been recently appointed in December, more or less, but you had been working in the artistic department for years before. So, four voices to discuss about the paper of the woman in contemporary creation. We don't have too much time as we expected initially. We need to finish it at 1950. We will try to speak a little bit quickly, but without losing our path. Just to set up a frame, feel free to ignore this frame if necessary, please. I'd like to start remembering a German female writer of the 19th century. Her name was Louise Otto. Histories of progressive musical politics in mid-19th century Germany often are focused on the writing of Richard Wagner or Franz Bender. However, Otto's lifelong engagement with music shows us how one contemporary woman considered the progressive movements in music and in her time were interrelated to progressive ideas on women's rights. So she wrote 2 opera librettos, 2 essay collections, lots of articles for newspapers, feuilletons, music journals, and she also directed her own women's journal. She advised her female readers 1.5 centuries ago to engage with the music of the new German school, which basically meant Wagner. She was a Wagner supporter. In the context of the middle-class women's movement, she saw music as a space for female advancement through both performance and the portrayals of women on stage. Her writings offer us a panorama of the complex network of Wagner proponents who also supported women's rights. At the same time, she provides evidence for what contemporary conservative critics saw as a social threat from both Wagnerian musical radicalism and the emancipated women, two extremely dangerous radicals, as you know, Wagner and women. It's a very interesting point of view, but all this happened in the 19th century, and in 1849 she wrote, "The history of all times and of today, especially, teaches that women will be forgotten if they forget to think about themselves." More than a century and a half later, we meet today to talk about women in contemporary scene. Just a figure that has attracted my attention this week. Mixtur open call receives about 700 applications every year, but the number of women applying is under the 10% still nowadays. To finish this introduction, a couple of sentences of some recent interviews to Mexican conductor Alondra de la Parra. She says, "I leave my job as a musician, not as a woman." And also, journalists never ask male conductors about how they manage to have an international career and grow their children at the same time. Best way to respect and support women is not to make an issue of this. But at the same time, nowadays, there's an evidence that there is still a lot of work to do, not only in Spain, as we will see. So let's start discussing on all these issues, and let's know your thoughts about it. If you want to start, Raushan, telling us about your experience as a woman in your country.
Bon dia to all. I just want to say that if you were at the first round table of this festival, you might have noticed that I was the only woman among the 5 speakers. Just a fact. My own experience shows that problems of a woman on a contemporary art scene is continue to be relevant. In my country, in Kazakhstan, it's post-Soviet country, the problems faced by women in contemporary art range from psychological rejection or condescension to banal harassment, unfortunately. Yes, it's really. In Kazakhstan, these problems began to be voiced openly only about 5 years ago. I don't know how strange it will seem to you, but often they are women who condone, who stigmatize the open discussion of these issues in my country. The model of modern woman that discussed in my country is often include the patient wife and patient mother who should serve family, and the sole task whose is to provide the comfort and good atmosphere in the family, in the house. But reality is different, and I want to emphasize that among the younger generation in Kazakhstan, it is girls who initiate performances and actions that criticize the political situation in the country. Just last week, 3 girls activists during the city marathon came out with the poster, "You cannot run away from the truth," for which they were arrested for 15 days. It was just last week. So I want to say that problems continue to be relevant, and we all together can do something to change this situation. For example, at the conservatory, Kazakh National Conservatory, we support research devoted to Kazakh women composers and musicologists. Women become heroes of graduating projects and master theses, and I consider that it is important to gender equality and to our common future. So thank you.
Thank you very much, Raushan. Yeah, you can take the microphone. And well, as she has invited you, please proceed and tell us about your experience in Palau de la Música Catalana, and also your knowledge about the situation of women, as you have made observations surely during your life as a director of the Catalan music magazine.
Well, thank you, Pep. Well, I have short experience as artistic director, as you know, because I'm just leaving the magazine and entering in the new position next September. And as you can see, I'm pregnant. So by the way I'm having a baby in June. So that's a very interesting point also in my life to have this change of position in this situation, that I think it's a good example that things can change a little bit maybe, and things maybe are starting to change. So in the sense that, well, for me and for the Palau de la Música has not been a problem that I'm having a baby, in the sense of starting a new position who is relevant and he's very public and who needs a lot of implication in job. And well, it's obviously that our culture continue to think that women are the main important part of the family when you have a baby, particularly when it's very little. And in my case, I will see because I don't have the experience already, but I think that well, I think in my mind, I think that to grow a family, it's not only a thing of women, it's a thing of two if you have the case of having a partner who help you, and not only that, who help you, who is implicated, who is a very important part, who is a 50% of the family. So I think in this sense that things can change, and things are starting to change. Because if I think about the quotes that Pep has read, particularly the Alondra de la Parra was very interesting, and I think she has well, she's very bright in this sense. She's not a women musician; she's a musician, only a musician. And when she's doing her work, he's only a musician. So she's having a family, and this is another thing. Well, and I think this is very important because if we don't think that women are are professional for itself, not because of his gender, we have a problem. We have a very big problem. So, this is my experience. I've recently read a very interesting book from Anna Baer, who explained the lives of 8 women composers from last 3 centuries, very smart composers who were aware to be forgotten, but now we remember them. Of course, Clara Schumann, Fanny Hensel, more recently Elizabeth McConchie, who were very bright as composers, even if, as Clara Schumann said, she left the composition because she thought that her work was not interesting for anyone, because anyone was saying her that they expected to listen to her music. So we have to continue changing this way of thinking, and also I think it's a very cultural big problem nowadays, because also I take the information of Pep in relation to Mixtur. Only 10% of women composers in Mixtur, in Mixtur, I don't have the name now, between the 7th century applications, only a 10% were women. You said?
I think it's from 700 applications,
700.
more or less. Just 8% are
8% or
from
10%.
women, more or less. I think that Robert told me
Well,
a few days
so
ago, but
that's
it's not 50-50 at all, let's say.
of course. And this is I think a very cultural problem, because when we see the artistic programs of all the auditoriums from all over the world, the most important difference that we can see between men and women are that there are always less composers and less musician directors, orchestral directors, and even if it starts to change a little bit, it has to change a lot to become a equality situation. So, well, but I'm very positive, and I think that we can manage to change this.
Thank you very much, Mercedes. Let's go now with Anna. Anna, from more than 1 decade ago, you have been the artistic director of the SPOR. In 2008, you initiated also Sinatet, which is the ensemble. It is your primary artistic and curatorial platform. But moreover, you have been appointed as a member of several cultural foundations and committees, isn't it? And you are board member of Danish Dance Theatre and the National Center for Contemporary and Experimental Music and Sound Art in Denmark. So we are looking forward for you to tell us about your experience in all the cultural field from the point of view of gender, not only as a woman, but a person with a wide experience in the management and cultural policies also.
Yes, thank you. Thank you for the invitation. Just to start with the question that you raised in the program book, are we have we solved the problem, or does it make sense to keep on arranging roundtable talks about women in contemporary music? And unfortunately, I have to say yes, it is. It's very important, but maybe more important is that you actually act, that you actually do something very concrete to change the scene, to take action on the problems. To be very honest, I start to feel a little bit frustrated about all the dialogue and conversations we have about the problem, because I think there's a lot of people in important positions that are actually able to do something about it, and that it's maybe more important than talking about the problem, if you understand me right. So I think what I think is very important is that you have the courage to change the model of who is making the decisions. I think if you really want to make changes in not just the contemporary music scene, but it's all over in all art scenes that we have problems with less female than male artists. It's in the film, it's in visual arts, it's the political scene, it's all over. And it's a huge cultural problem. And it's a cultural problem that comes from a way of thinking. It's not it's not because people are stupid, it's not because people are evil, it's simply just a cultural system that we have to understand to be able to change it. And I think some of the important things that you can do is actually that you let people, that you change, that you make a more diverse picture of people in charge and people who decide. So one of the things that I often say is that it's very, very important if you want to have more female composers for a call. I think there's a lot of things, it's a chain, there's a lot of things that you need to change or try to change. You need to have more female composers teaching at the conservatory, so you have good role models. And how do we make that possible? Well, we need more female it's only male people in the head of the conservatory. It's only male people in the boards, and I think this is a change that you have to change if you really want to see that the scene is developing. So you need more female opera directors, you need more female directors for symphonic orchestras, you need more female people as artistic directors for festivals, for ensembles. So you get a more 50-50 balance. And I think nothing would have been better if it were more female than male. I just think it's very important that we find a good balance. I think the whole scene will be much more relevant for an audience because it's a more natural picture of our world, actually. And there's been a lot of scientific science about car companies that really went very focused into making a 50-50 system in all departments. And they could see that they actually earn more money. So it's not about being fair. It's really that actually the scene will be much better. And I think to talk about quality being the struggle or the problems for not having more female composers in the program, that's not true. I mean, I hear a lot of bad pieces written by male composers, so that is not, I mean, that's not an excuse for not having more female composers in the program or in the leading positions.
Great. Now we are going to listen to Robert, but I tell you in advance, you have spoken about making things, introducing changes. I will ask all of you three, if you can give some examples of changes you have made or you are thinking of making in the future in your organization. While you think we can listen to Robert, I will make the same question to him, but he declared recently in an interview that in the next 5 years, his aim is to have the 50% of the conductors of the Orquestra Sinfónica de Barcelona being female. So it's an ambitious aim. I'm not sure if you will succeed, to be sincere, but at least sure there will be a higher percentage than now. Maybe it's 0 or 1%. Anyway, please explain, tell us about gender at the Auditori de Barcelona, please.
Yeah, I completely agree with Anna Berit. Basically, what I did is fix a goal, fix an objective, and take an active part on this thing. I'm actually talking about invited conductors, obviously, because we have quite a big amount of concerts that are taken by the principal conductor. In my opinion, it's not a discussion of quality, as you are saying, because it's obvious. I mean, obvious. It's stupid to be talking about quality. It's just that we are missing, basically. Which I tend to think a lot in my life about cost of opportunity, and what we're basically doing with this discrimination is losing half of the talent, missing half of the talent away. Half of the population is not part of this world. Half of this talent is washed away. So basically, there's no discussion about that. We are all human beings, and we all have the same capacities and talents. That's one thing. I was just reading an article this morning, not because we were having this conversation today, but it was just on the news. And it said that on the last 10 years, a recent study that said on the last 10 years in Spain, the amount of directors or like high-level positions in companies rolled by female has decreased from 19% to 16% from 2008 till now. So I'm quite pessimistic, as you were saying. I think we really need to be proactive and take a step. I think if we just leave it and we leave it to to the tendencies of the culture and the dynamics of the economics, the things are not going to end up well for us. And it's a matter of productivity at the end. So if we manage to put more women in our lives, we'll do better, that's for sure. So basically they explained that it's because of the crisis. Because of the crisis we tend to be conservative, and because we are conservative we tend to look for more traditional positions, in a sense that we are not being open to, how would you say that in English, like conciliation, familiar conciliation. So basically being able to work from home, having more freedom in the way you work and how you work, and working more for goals and less for day-to-day timetables. So that's excluding a huge part of the population, which is the people who are taking care of our families, which is mainly women in our country. And that's why we are poorer now than we were before, 10 years ago. And that's my opinion. I mean, it's an article, but that's how I think. And I think in the arts is exactly the same. Well, obviously we have some of our programs where it's much easier to match the equality in gender equality, because I mean we have fantastic offer of I don't know, soloists and whatever. But we have to make a special effort in conductors and composers, that's for sure. And that was my point, my goal. What now I'm facing is that the sector is actually has waken up, and they're looking for female conductors a lot, especially those countries from the north. And so they're not so easy to I mean, there are loads, amazing amount of extraordinary conductors. To talk about something, I mean, we could talk about composers, but I'm just talking about my own experience at the moment. But they are being so demanded that it's not always easy to get them. But that's such good news. What we have to do, and that's my also something I really believe in. I'm the responsible from a public institution, so I have a clear responsibility in that sense. But it's not only because we are public institution, we are publicly founded. It's because anything that has a social impact should have a social responsibility. So basically, if we think of international, I don't know, international business, international private companies, the bigger they are, the bigger their corporate social responsibility department is. The more they have to be aware of their social impact. If we talk about orchestras, we can think, for example, a private example would be the Vienna Phil, no? The Vienna Philharmonic. They have such a great impact, such an international impact, but they are privately founded. The orchestra is owned by the own musicians. But they have a responsibility because they have this public impact. They can't look on another side, and that's a particularly conservative image of our world, no? So even the private ones have to do something, and more so the public orchestras like ours, or institutions like ours. We have a responsibility. We can't deny it. We just have to face it and make it possible.
Great, thank you very much. As I advanced, and before starting the small, quick debate, if you want, I would like to ask you about, could you tell us some specific actions you have done in your organizations to achieve a more consistent gender equality?
I have mentioned about research that we support in our institution, but maybe the most important thing that I would like to say is that, in my opinion, it seems to me we try to not emphasize the gender. I'm sorry. Because in our daily work, in our life, I consider that professionalism, musical abilities, and particular competence should be the main criteria. And for example, in contemporary festival in Kazakhstan, in classical radio in Kazakhstan, in conservatory, our national conservatory, I mean all organization that I were managed, I try to give the equal opportunities to both, to men and women. But I want to share with you a very banal story that could be occurred in every life. I mean some kind of dispute with dispute with a friend, when he said to us, no, to me, in that case, well, let's admit that almost all the great achievements in the history of mankind are made by men. I think many of us in life have heard this argument. So I told him that we know the real history too poorly, and we little consider the objective conditions of the past to make such statements. And today the situation is fundamentally different. Scientists prove the authorship of unique works of the past written by women. So, for example, it's a very interesting fact. A record of an amazing 16th century motet appeared recently. The music for 5 equal voices of unspecified sex is astonishingly beautiful. Authorship is attributed to a nun princess called Leonora d'Este. You cannot hear of her mother, Lucrezia Borgia, for example. So I just want to say that our current situation, our world depends on us. So, and depends on our efforts in these directions. So.
Okay. Mercedes, an example?
Well, in our case, in Palau de la Música, we are a private concert hall, and of course, not because of this, we have a different mind from Auditori de Barcelona. We also have a lot of responsibility, a lot of social responsibility, in the sense that our programs are listened and received by a very big audience. So, of course, we have to take this responsibility and make difference from times ago. So, but I also agree with you in the sense that we don't want to make some extraordinary things because it's needed to do in a very special moment to put women in the first level. We think more that the direction is to normalize and to look for an equality in the next years between women and men in all the levels. So interpreters, directors, composers, but not because we need to achieve 50% women and 50% men, then because we found we found that these 50% women are very, very good. So we need to make a research in this sense. We need to we need the help of the other responsibles in this change of mind, who are also the conservatoires and the high schools of music, to put the the needs that women need to get inside this wall of music, and then us as concert halls will be able to have more easily the situation of invited them to our programs. So it's not an immediately change. It's a change that will take some time, and well, we are very, very responsible about this, but very responsible also in the importance of the quality. But because of all the people who are invited to Palau de la Música really are very, very good, and really, well, they deserve to be in our programmation, not only because they are women or men.
Okay, thank you very much. Something to add from your point of view, some comment, or we can start listening to the audience. So, recordeu que podeu fer les vostres preguntes en anglès, o si no us atreviu podeu fer-la en català i la traduirem a la persona que li vulgueu preguntar. No sé si hi ha preguntes per part del públic. Well, while the audience... Yeah? No sé, si li podeu apropar, gràcies.
Well, this is more reflection than a question, I think. But I think that one of the things that we need to fix is try to change how the society address or what the society demands of female artists in relation to male artists, which I think is not the same. And I will explain myself. In media, it's very common that when, and I've seen this myself, that when there is an interview to a female composer or artist, there is always the same question, is how is to be a woman in a world of men? And I don't know, but I've seen this question to be made to the Argentinian composer Beatriz Ferreira, and the journalist was doing questions about this like all the time, and I was thinking, I think this woman has much more to say about their work than about her condition of being a woman. I think this is something that we have to change and try to address to any person, whichever is gender or country of origin or whatever, as an artist, and that's first of all.
A good example would be you have the press conference. You come with the program, amazing program. Well, you think it's amazing program. You've been working all year. It's like, and the journalists ask you about the budget. That's always happens in our press conference. The only questions they have is about budget and kind of less relevant things for us. So I agree with you in a sense that we should be talking about what they have to say in the music world rather than what they feel like being female because they're female. But also I want to say that when I did that statement to try to reach a balance between gender, male and female conductors in the orchestra, the first thing I received from the musicians is a negative reaction. So that explains that I was in the right path. Basically, I'm in the right path. There's something wrong. We have to change it. We have to work on it. And I think that's what we should think, that there's nothing normal about the actual situation. It's absolutely not normal. We have to change it. We have to take steps. And I totally agree with Anna Berit. We have to fix objectives. Otherwise, I mean, at least from those who we have responsibilities, because otherwise the tendency is never going to work, never. I didn't answer. I mean, you didn't make a question. I just made another statement. Sorry. No, I suppose, I don't know, I won't talk about a specific thing, but there were negative reactions, because we always tend to talk about quality and stupid stuff, and we always tend to think that that there's no women conductors in the world that are worth to try. That's just the way we tend to think. Like it's a culture. It's a culture. So I don't know. There's always those voices that appear, and they try to frighten the audience, and it's like, come on. I mean, wake up. It's so. I mean, what's a little bit annoying is to be here talking about what we have to be talking. I mean, we have to do it, but it's annoying. We shouldn't be. We should just be seeing how much we are losing on our way. You were saying less talk and more do. Just take action, and in your day-to-day try to make differences in that world.
In relation that with Robert quote, that explained that maybe there are more prejudice in the musical world, inside the musical world, than outside. So, because I think the audience doesn't have this level of prejudice when they listen to, when they go to a concert and they see a women conductor, or they listen to a female composition, they don't think that they are listening about the women work. So they listen music only, and they see only a conductor, and they particularly like maybe more because it's different, this is new, this is fresh. So if we have this kind of prejudice inside our world, that means that, well, it's always a cultural thing, and we have to make a change in education in this sense. So that's because that's why I said before that we need to start a very long way. That's not a change of mind in 1 year. That's a very long way to do in order to change this way of thinking. And not to speak about another thing that we haven't spoken, that it's the difference of salaries between men and women in some areas of direction positions. But maybe we need another roundtable for that.
Probably 2 or 3 more about different topics like this one. But now it's time to finish, more or less. We are 7 minutes to 8. If there's another question from the audience or another comment from people in the round table, otherwise, oh yeah, Anne, please.
If there's no more questions, I just want to say a little bit more about the work at the SPOR Festival. Since 2007, we have been programming 50-50 male-female, not with kind of very detailed numbers, just kind of a natural thing. We've never talked about it. It's just, we just did it. So you don't need to make a huge story about it. You just do it. So, and I think it's important. I think there is a lot of pressure from the inside the world in itself, because it's a very conservative world. The music scene, maybe not so much a contemporary scene, but the contemporary scene is kind of a little brother to the huge classical scene, and this scene is very, very male-dominated and very, very conservative. And this is why I'm saying that it's so important that we change in different levels of both the directors of the symphonic orchestra or the concert houses. And I think there's a lot to do. And I think it's difficult to make these changes because the boards hiring the people are all male. The members in the boards are male, and they not because they it's just a natural instinct that you normally choose something that is very close to yourself. So this is just scientific facts, that if you have a board only consisting of men, they will probably choose a male director for a position, just because we as human beings choose something that is very close to ourselves. It's nothing there's nothing wrong with it. This is just, so you need also to try to understand all these patterns or habits we have as human beings. And I think to also help the development of male and female being more balanced, there's a lot of other things you need to change also. I mean, when you look at the very conservative way that pieces are presented on the stage, the habits of the composers, the musicians. So this is also what we worked a lot with at the festival, to change the positions between the audience and the musicians, the conductor, to rearrange how is a stage actually, how do you enter the concert hall. So there's a lot of dogmas that you need to kind of be aware of and try to change and play with it to make to change on many levels, to try to get away from the very conservative right and wrong way of doing things. I think this will also help a lot on this gender. And another thing that we do at the festival is that we have a school for contemporary music. So we invite all the children in the region playing an instrument to come and be trained as composers and meet female and male composers, just for them to be introduced to what is it actually to compose, because we have a lot of musicians, but not many of them develop into the field of composing, because it's not something that you are introduced to when you learn to play an instrument. So this is also a way that we try to move and make some just movements.
Very interesting. So thank you very much, Anna, Robert, Raushan, Mercedes. If you agree, we are going to enjoy the next concert of Mixtur, the Container Ensemble. Thank you for attending this roundtable. Thank you for explaining us about your experience, and hopefully see you soon with good news about gender equality. Thank you very much.